So we want to talk a little bit about image compression and really just in general optimization is what it's considered. Um, we want to think about page load times. That affects a lot of things, but really just in a basic sense, users watching your page load. So if you've ever went to a website and just watched an image kind of chug along and load, we want to avoid that. We want to get those images to load fast off the server. And there's lots of ways to do that. This is just going to be the basic, but this is that graphic that's on the instructional material. And essentially, we're going to talk about three main graphic file types that load quicker on the web. And there's different reasons to use different ones, and that's what this chart's going to kind of talk about, and that's what I wanted to kind of go through really quick. There are three types. You've heard these: JPEG, a GIF or a GIF, and a PNG. Now, a lot of times these are animated, but there's still versions as well. So the strengths and weaknesses. The weaknesses mean these are going to like be the downsides of why you might not want to use them, right? And the strengths are why we would. So JPEGs are really good with photos, meaning there's gradients and lots of different colors, right? But the downside is there's no transparency. So if you had a logo or anything like that that had an odd shape, you can't get transparency, and a lot of times it'll just fill in white or whatever the background color is you're using, like in Photoshop. Here we have a GIF or a GIF, whatever you like. This is really good for logos and clip art, for solid colors and basic transparency, but there is a limited number of colors and basic transparency that you can actually use. It's something that you don't really see a ton of just still graphics, but it is something that you can see, and obviously you can use animation there as well. And then the last is kind of the best of both worlds. There's lots of colors and lots of transparencies and pings or PNGs, but the downside is there's a larger file size that's associated with it. So a website is the sum of all of its parts, and if it's got lots of images to download, then it takes a lot longer to load. Now, what this actually means technically, what you're going to be doing and what you need to do for Web3 is optimize all the images that you're going to use for your site. And the way we can do this is by using Photoshop. Now, there's not really a ton that you have to do in Photoshop. You just have to kind of know what to actually look for. Now, I have an image of just bears here that I'm going to open up off my desktop that we can kind of play around with. There's just some real simple tools we can use in Photoshop that allow us to optimize, or really what we're doing is compressing those images. And all of those file types, JPEG, GIF, GIF, and PNG, by default compress images. They make the file size smaller so they load faster on the web. So you can do whatever you want in Photoshop. This is just a picture, but if we use our little graphic here, we can see that, hey, this is a JPEG, probably a good candidate because there's gradients and lots of different colors, right? It's neither one of these necessarily. So you can kind of see lots of different colors. There's gradients between like the browns and the greens and the whites and everything, okay? So what we want to do is File and Export and Export As. And what this is going to do is open up a little window that you can kind of play around with things. Now, the thing that we're going to pay attention to is 5.2 megabytes. Now, that's not huge for just like an image itself, but that's pretty big for something that you would download off the web. Okay? So what we could do is try to get this thing lower. Right? Now, we can see that it's 3,000 pixels by 2,200 pixels. So this thing's pretty big. If we kind of, go to 100% down here, you can see like we got pretty good detail, and we can see that we don't necessarily need something that large on the web. So this is where you got to kind of play around and see. What we can do is we can scale this down. So if we say, let's say the largest we would want this is 800. Right? You see the height changes as well. What this is going to do is load a preview, and now all of a sudden our 100% here is looking like this, right? So this looks like something you'd see on the web. And if we look at the 466K here, that's looking pretty good in terms of something that would work on the web. Now the other thing we can do is usually we don't need to have the quality at 100%. And this is like something that you got to play around with and balance. But we can play with the quality as well. So a lot of times on the web what you do is take away quality in the image to get it to load faster. Okay? So you can kind of see that that doesn't look much different. So we can go with 60%. And a good rule of thumb is I always try 60% just to see if it looks different. And if it does, you know, raise it up to 80 and that's fine. You can kind of see if you go down to 0, this actually looks pretty good, but if you look really close, they're starting to get some pixels in there and everything, and it's just not really great, and we don't usually want that. So we can go with 60. And now you can see we're down to 144K, and that's really good. Okay? So the other thing you'll see over here, and you can play around with this, obviously you can change it to a PNG, so if we do that, you see it jumps up to 946. So that's, you know, not what we want, but we knew that based on our chart that we have for our instructional material, this module. So we want to keep it at JPEG. We're going to go to 60%. And the other thing you'll notice here, and we're not going to talk about a ton, but when you get into mobile and when you get into really optimizing sites and you think about retina displays and all that kind of stuff, what we can do is actually add 2 times, and there's 3 times, you can get really into this. You can add 2 times the size, and you can export all, right? And I'm going to do this. You don't have to do it. Just do 1 time, and that's fine for Web 3. But if you get into this, you can read about it more. Just kind of Google retina displays or 2-time images for mobile web design. But when we export all, I'm just going to save it on the desktop so we can find it easy. What it does is it actually creates 2 images for us, and those are the images that we're going to use. So we got this one and this one here. Those are the images that we can actually use on our website, okay? And they're compressed, so you can actually kind of see, like, there's that one and there's that one, right? So we got a 1-time and a 2-time image, and like I said, you only need to do the 1-time, the 100% scale. But that's the short version of kind of optimizing images for the web. It's a little bit of teasing out like stuff that you might get into with responsive design and mobile if you really get into this. But if you have questions about that at that point, just come find one of us and we can kind of talk a little bit more about it.